Welcome to Threads of Sustainability, where you get to hear the passionate, informative, and engaging conversations of creatives, makers, manufacturers, and producers from all over the globe. We explore what sustainability can look like in the quilting, fiber, and textile world, and I'm your host, Bridget O'Flaherty, also known as the Sustainable Quilter. I'm super excited about this week's episode. For you guys, I was finally able to coordinate schedules and sat down and had a conversation with Jeffrey Tim from the Global Organic Textile Standard. And GOTS is a major player in the organics world, and I've always wanted to try and understand the standard better and know why we want to use organics and what work they're doing. And this conversation did not disappoint. We talked about all kinds of different things. Of course, I'm going to let you hear the actual interview. But yeah, it was just such a great opportunity to learn more about what the standard is, what it means to us as consumers, and why we should be concerned and looking for organics if we're going to be buying new materials. Anyway, it was a really interesting conversation. We talked about all of the different levels of organics and the limitations of the certifications as well. So it really was a good, honest, interesting conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. I have with me here today Jeffrey Tim from the Global Organic Textile Standard organization. Welcome, Jeffrey. Nice to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
I've been excited to talk to you folks. I've been trying for almost pretty much a year to get in touch with you folks so that I can have a conversation, because the Global Organic Textile Standard, which we're just going to call GOTS, because that's kind of how it gets referred to as, GOTS is a big part of the quilt world in terms of organic fabric and organic threads as well. And I want to understand the standard better. And I'm sure that the listeners here also do as well. And so thank you so much for being here and being willing to talk to me. Can you, first of all, tell me a little bit about what your role is and how you got there?
Yes, absolutely, Bridget. I mean, it's great to be able to share with interested people about the GOTS and the Global Organic Textile Standard, what we try and do, what the impact it may have. My personal role is as an organic production specialist.
So what does that mean?
I look at the incoming fibers. GOTS as a certification standard for organic textiles. The basis, of course, is organic fiber. That continues then through all the processing stages from the raw fiber up to the final garment, or whether it's thread or fabric. So all the processing stages are strictly conditioned with requirements for environmental and social protection. So we have ecological and human rights kind of built into the standard, as well as third-party certification. So it's not us certifying. GOTS has established this standard, and there are certification bodies and accreditation bodies that oversee them in a way to create an independent certification system. So no companies there's no membership per se in that sense.
So you're more like the umbrella policy that people are trying to adhere to.
Yeah, so we've over the past 20 years now that GOTS has been around. When it started, it was the mission was to create a unified organic textile standard, because at the time there were 20, 30, 40 different standards all over the world, and that made it very difficult. So now that we have one unified scheme essentially for organic certification, that's supposed to help, and I think it has. But coming back to your question of why would I be looking at organic fibers? One thing to note is that the first point of certification is on the farm, and so the agricultural production is actually certified according to a certification standard of organic agriculture, and so that could be the United States National Organic Program, or that could be the European Bio Standard, or the Indian PETA standard. So as long as it's part of the IFOAM family of standards, that's the International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movements, and there's 20, 30 different standards that are have been accepted into that family as equivalent.
And Canada has one as well, and I'm not sure what the name of that is. I think it's the Canadian Organic Growers or something like that is the Canadian standard.
Yes, exactly. And so, for example, if there was a Canadian grower growing, certified organic hemp fiber, for example, in Canada. I'm not sure if that's legal yet in Canada, but
I think there is hemp grown in Canada, and I think there's flax, there's linens as well grown in Canada. Yeah.
So yeah. Whether it's let's then just say for linen, for example, the on the farm that would be the organic certification would be guaranteed by the Canadian Organic Standard, and the agency or the company agency that certifies that farm is adhering to organic management principles.
Okay. Their standards might be slightly different than what your thresholds are at GOTS, or are they just completely unrelated, really, because one's about the farming agricultural side and the other one is about the manufacturing production?
They're not completely unrelated, but they look at different components of organic production and processing. So the Canadian organic regulations, I'm sorry, I'm not well versed in them.
That's okay.
But
That's okay. You can talk about the US as well. That's good.
No, but it's I mean, most of the major organic agriculture standards are similar enough or considered equivalent. So, for example, the Canadian and US organic food can travel across the border and still maintain organic status.
Okay.
And that's thanks to alignment of the majority of management principles of organic regulations. What changes more often than not is the name of a specific document, or is what type of certification, or not certification, but certain types of documents that are required according to Canadian business law or US business law. And so the differences are quite subtle more often than not. And, not all standards meet that high criteria as the Canadian, US, or EU. For example, there are many local, national organic programs that don't have as much documentation built into the monitoring. And so those are a little bit weaker, if you could say. They still follow the same principles of fair share, ecological care, human care. So those organic farming practices, I would say the same within any of the IFOAM family of standards. The practices on the farm should be pretty much the same.
Okay. So that part is sort of outside of the GOTS realm, but they come to you certified. You gave me an analogy when we were off recording about the potato chip, and that was really helpful. Can you give us that again?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we believe that an organic textile starts with an organic ingredient and then organic processing. So just like with a potato chip, you start with an organic potato grown on a farm that's been certified organic. That potato, then to become a potato chip, you've got to slice and fry it. So the oil, there's not a lot left on it. It's maybe it's still just residue compared to how much is used, but that oil also needs to be certified organic. The facility that's making those potato chips need to be audited to ensure that they're adhering to organic processing principles. Likewise, with GOTS, we say the fiber needs to be certified organic according to the production, so from the farm. But organic regulations were originally designed for food. That's why there is no national or the standards for textiles, as well as for cosmetics, in fact, have been adopted by private standards. So there's the Cosmos and GOTS for cosmetics and textiles, where ingredients and processing have been outlined to create what we would then call an organic cosmetic or an organic textile.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. And so talk to me a little bit more about that processing and ginning, and what are the kind of stuff what is GOTS looking for? to be able to certify it as organic? What is, it's a third party that goes in and does the certification, but what is the standard actually? What are the thresholds? What does it ask for?
Yeah, so in the case of cotton, I mean, it's the greater majority of all the organic fibers being grown and used is cotton. So the cotton needs to come from an organic farm, but then, and with that certification, it would arrive at a cotton gin. And so that's the first stage of processing, and that's where then GOTS certification begins. So at the gin, because it's a mechanical process in terms of cleaning out the raw cotton, there aren't many environmental issues to be that concerned about. But so the main things at gins tend to be social protection, labor rights, ensuring that the people working there are not being abused, or they're not working overtime without fair compensation, that there's no child labor. I mean, so the GOTS standard is we're pretty much well aligned with the international labor organizations or standards for human rights protection, and so it does convey a protection to the people working actually at the facility, for one. And so when you buy a GOTS certified textile, you can be confident that not only is the fabric itself safe in terms of chemical residue, I'll get into that in a sec, but the processing, the people who've made it haven't been harmed in the process.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that, because you do hear these stories of labor issues in countries that there's not a lot of regulation around, and they sound quite horrific at times, for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. The labor conditions. One of the requirements also for GOTS is that any fibers coming from regions that are suspected to have persistent violations of human rights, particularly that it tends to be forced labor, those regions are off the not allowed. Such fibers are not allowed to be used in GOTS, even though they have they might have organic certification, because organic certification sadly, it does not look at labor protection.
Right. It's just about the farm processing.
Exactly. So it's agronomic principles are great, but within the US and the EU, as the initiators, or that was the first organic laws in 1991, 92, national laws there, and the argument was, well, we have social protection laws. We don't need to bake in more social protection into organic production. It's an agronomic standard, it's a food processing standard in these systems. But then once organic became a global trade, then suddenly it was noted that the social protection that was expected wasn't being met.
So there's certain regions then that, even if they're, like, just so that I'm summarizing what you're saying, so even if they've met what they're calling their organic standards for production at the farm level, they still wouldn't be invited into GOTS certification because there's no guarantee about the labor piece.
It's not if there's not a guarantee, but the certifying body that is responsible for that fiber coming in, so they audit the documentation, and if according to their risk assessment, if something seems fishy, then they're not supposed to accept it.
Okay.
And I don't want to name names, but
so yeah, no, we don't need to name names. But so I guess there's then the potential for corruption within the system, right? Within that third party system, or there might be payouts and payoffs if that's beneficial to the producer. Is that something you guys are seeing?
Within the GOTS processing chain, the value chain, and the certification, the amount of documentation that's required, for example, even a proof of financial payment. And we have a system of transaction certificates where the cotton, for example, let's say, once it's at the gin, it's been ginned, then it goes to the spinner. Well, how does the spinner know that this bale is GOTS certified, right? That it was ginned in a GOTS certified facility? Well, that comes with a transaction certificate, and those are they're hard to fake. There have been cases in the past where fraud has occurred, and I think fraud is a problem in every sector. So we're not free from that, but we have been reinforcing the system to reduce the chances of fraud from occurring. What we can say is that, or have noticed, is that there was a major amount of fraud, or the biggest fraud potential that we noticed was in consultation with specialists on the ground, was that there was the highest fraud potential from between the farm and the spinner.
Sure. Okay.
And so that's why we, for example, now require that gins be independently certified. They're not allowed to be hired as subcontractors, because we saw some notice, okay, there's some non-compliance occurring here. And then, we need to see the transaction certificate from the farm and their scope certificate saying, oh, as an organic farm, I've been, I have within, X number of hectares or acres dedicated to this particular fiber. So the projected yields. So these things are much tighter. And so although GOTS does not certify the farm, we're kind of reaching past the first processing stage. So looking at the production level to ensure that the traceability is not just back to the gin, but back to the farm. And so we ensure that, for example, in India, all organic cotton farms have to be registered with us before their organic cotton can go to a GOTS gin.
Okay. So, and are you anticipating requiring that from all regions then, that same requirement to be registered with you?
At the moment, we're developing the platform and kind of working out the kinks in India, because that was where we identified the greatest need.
Okay.
However, as we move forward,
like a pilot program.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, I think as we move forward, the benefit and need for that level of traceability back to the farm is being requested and demanded. It's necessary now. And so it's no longer something that would be nice. It's something that's needed.
Yeah, traceability is a really important part to make sure that all the stages really are truly doing what they say they're doing, right?
Yeah.
And so that's those certificates that go from each part, each step along the way has to carry that certificate with it, right?
Yes. It's essentially that the ownership of the product is traced. It's not just one concept is bulk balance.
What is that?
So that was a form of, and it still is a form of, so-called traceability for a lot of private sustainability standards. And I use that term loosely in terms of sustainability standard. Essentially, there are standards out there that say, well, if you buy 100 pounds of cotton, of organic cotton, and another 500 pounds of non-organic cotton, well, you can just sell 100 pounds of that 600 as organic.
Right. Okay. So it'd be mixed in with it.
Yes, that's this bulk balance approach. And the alternative is it traces ownership.
So it's like a chain of custody.
There it is. Chain of custody. Thank you.
Okay.
You know the word.
Like, okay, wait a minute. What is he talking about? Okay, it's probably a chain of custody.
Yes, so exactly. So with chain of custody, that 100 pounds of organic cotton will be followed.
Okay, so it's only the 100 pounds. You can't mix it with organic and call 100 pounds of it organic.
Exactly. And that's, so GOTS uses a chain of custody approach to ensuring that the raw materials, as they're processed, are tracked. I mean, so that we know that this particular batch of cotton is organic. We know that this bolt of fabric is organic. Why? Because we can trace it through all the transaction certificates, going back through all the processing stages. And you can see like, oh, okay, this was, these two bales were mixed to make this thread.
Okay. And so I want to ask you another question around the sort of the regional certification. Where does ISO fit in with all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I cannot comment on the ISO 14001 simply because I'm not well versed in it.
Okay. So it doesn't fall under the IFOAM category then?
That's not a organic production standard.
Okay, okay. It's just an environmental standard. Okay. Okay. Because the reason I ask is because I was looking at linen recently, and it fell under the ISO 14001, but I didn't know where that fit in terms of organic and whether that was something that were interchangeable or related in any way. So I was just curious to know if you knew, but it's okay if you don't.
The ISO 14001 is not an organic standard. And so if cotton or linen were to try and enter the GOTS certification supplies chain, it would not be accepted because it needs to be one of the organic certification standards that are part of the iPhone family.
Okay, that's fair. It doesn't mean that it's not doing environmentally good things. It's just not fitting within the standard.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know that particular ISO standard, but to note that the GOTS standard has environmental protection criteria which are very specific to textile processing.
Right. The ISO is generalized. Okay.
I mean, there are also or organic standards that have not met or haven't gone through the application process to become recognized as a member of the iPhone family of standards. And I can say honestly that yes, those are organic standards, and they're perfectly fine for organic agriculture and food products. But from a GOTS perspective, in terms of a global system, we do have some limitations in terms of how accepting we can be.
The line has to be somewhere. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we thought, let's just join with the International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movements. It's the representation of all organic agriculture standards and movements around the world. And so we thought those are the team to align with, essentially.
So tell me a little bit about that history of GOTS. And I can't remember if we talked about it at the beginning of this recording or if we talked about it before we were recording. So tell me a little bit again about the history of GOTS, like how long ago it started, why GOTS, why did we need that?
Yeah, well, just this year, actually, we celebrated GOTS celebrated the 20-year anniversary. And at that time, it was seen that there were many efforts around the world to establish some organic textile standard. Again, because textiles, like cosmetics, have not been included in the organic regulations. And so there were private initiatives around the world to as well as some national initiatives to create an organic textile standard. But there was you couldn't sell, if it was a Turkish organic textile standard, it wouldn't qualify in the United States or in Canada. You couldn't say that it was organic. And so there was these compliance or compatibility issues with all these different standards. And because textiles are such a global industry, there's so much happening all over the place that it was seen that there was a need for a unified standard system. And so GOTS was established for different organic organizations that had been even themselves already developing an organic textile standard. And they gave up their own to create a unified one.
And so how many different regions now are we seeing GOTS products in? Like where they're being manufactured? Do you know?
Oh, in terms of manufacturing, well, I would say globally, but of course there are not all countries have a textile sector.
Yeah, Canada's textile sector is pretty small.
Understandably.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, there's lots of people using organics, but the production of organics in Canada is pretty small. I think anybody who is doing linens or I think maybe hemp, I think that's pretty small. Like it's small batch work that's happening here right now. It's more experimental than high production.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how it starts. I think I would definitely like to see more the so-called industrialized nations growing.
I think it would be amazing. I'm going to be planting a little flax plot here on my property, and I guess I get to call it organic, but it's not going to be
Oh,
certified.
delightful.
So I'm not. I'm doing. I think a meter by 6 meters is what I'm going to be doing. So it's not very big. It's just a test patch. I want to see how it goes. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about what happens. So we've talked about the ginning and we know what's going on there, but what about when it's getting to the actual fiber processing? What are some of the standards that GOTS is trying to figure out there?
Well, yeah. So once we've got our, fibers that we can work with. So the cotton lint, for example. Yeah, I mean, it gets spinned, it gets dyed, it gets conditioned. Again, I'm not a textile expert, but from what I've heard from my colleagues and from what I can read in the standard, textile processing can be very toxic in terms of the chemicals used. So not only is that a potential threat to the environment in terms, especially fresh waterways, but also the people that are working in these environments. And so things that you can see in a GOTS certified facility are, a good clean air, good air filtration, bright lights so that the people can see. The working conditions are humane in that sense. So you're not crowding in like sardines. And I've noticed that there are actually also many certified entities or factories that are getting GOTS certified as even though they're not processing anything organic. They say we're ready to do anything organic if our buyers ask us to. They're willing to do the organic, but they've gotten GOTS certification to show that they are compliant with social and environmental governance. So the ESG is a big thing, and so this is part of due diligence to say I know where my fibers are coming from. I know where I can trace it back, and so in that sense, we see that as we go into the nitty gritty of textile processing, we see that GOTS facilities tend to be a lot cleaner, a lot safer for the people working there, but also for environmental pollution aspects.
Hey everyone, it's Bridget, the Sustainable Quilter. I wanted to let you know about the Green Stitchers Hive. It's our brand new online community. It's a welcoming space where we can connect, share knowledge and resources, and support each other in our journey towards sustainable textile practices, whatever that means to you: quilting, weaving, knitting, felting, anything. Inside the Hive, we have workshops, monthly challenges, live Q&A sessions, live lectures with guest speakers, and opportunities to connect with other like-minded people. You can access the Green Stitchers Hive on my website at bridgetoflaherty.com. Can't wait to see you there. I think it's one of those things that we kind of forget a little bit when we're buying our fabric and our thread and whatever production we're doing, that in the textile world, it's always made by another person. It's not a machine that's making what we're doing. Those machines are always run by people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, my impression or my thoughts were that it was, all these huge machines. I mean, walking through some of these facilities, they're immense machines, but there's always people managing them, and they're right there. So, sometimes it's, we walked through one facility, and I was like, oh, I didn't notice any lint in the air, even though there should have been. But the suction system, the air filtration system was good enough that the working conditions are good for the people working there. But it's also, from knowing that the people that have worked on these things and that we benefit from their as individuals, we benefit from other people's hard work. And that's definitely one thing. We want to know that our food and our clothes are being grown and processed equitably, fairly, and sustainably. But not only that, we also want to make sure that there's no residues on our fabrics, right? If you're making a quilt for your granddaughter, your nephew, it's like, well, I need to make sure that there's no potentially toxic chemicals that are at high residue levels. it's not just processing chemicals. There's also heavy metals that can be applied to certain that are sometimes in the dye. And I'm sure you're much more versed than I in terms of, textile processing and production. But
Yeah. Yeah. There's two ways that the chemicals or whatever is used in the processing of fabric can leave. It's either on the fabric or in the water. so so what happens with the water that you guys are working really hard to have it not leave on the fabric? So what happens? How do you guys monitor, measure? What are your thresholds? Do you know your threshold? What is it that you're trying to accomplish there? How do you deal with that?
so for one, there are residue limits. There are fixed limits within the standard. There's hundreds of different chemicals that are listed. I was shocked to see how many chemicals might be used in textile processing.
Right, right, yeah.
But each has its use case, and so there are very strict categories or limits for the different categories of chemicals and specific chemicals that are used, so that it doesn't stay on the fabric, and so that as a user you don't get exposed to that. But within the processing, in terms of washing, for example, at the facility, most have to have a closed water system or closed cycle. And so most of the chemicals are not allowed to leave the facility, as far as I know. And if there is anything that's considered non-toxic at a certain level, then it is allowed. But there's the ZDHC, the zero discharge of hazardous chemicals, and that I believe most of our we are pretty much aligned to that. Don't quote me on it, but my colleagues in the chemical or environmental ecological protection are more familiar with all the chemicals.
Right. So I guess the advantage then is to not use the chemicals in the first place, right? So you don't have to deal with them when they're in your facility.
Yes. The challenge is that with textile processing, I think generally is that nobody has to use these chemicals, but it means that the color's fastness increases, or to get that particular shade of blue, you need to use this particular dye, which might have, some
The heavy metals in it or
heavy
whatever.
metals in it, exactly. But GOTS strives to be a practical standard. So there are things that we could say, oh, nobody needs to use this, but there are facilities out there that for some reason want to use that or need to use a specific chemical. And as long as it's not toxic or at the amount that it's used and the way that it's handled, and it's no residues or the residue limits are acceptable according to our standard, then it can be used. Even though I would prefer it not to be used, we don't want to be so GOTS is already a very challenging standard to meet. And in terms of the allowed chemicals, yes, there are many chemicals that are allowed, which, if not handled properly, are toxic. That is true. But if they are handled properly within certain limits, then it's acceptable. And we don't want the industry to ignore organic textiles because it's impractical.
Well, and like you said, most textiles that are produced, like even in the world of natural dyeing, which, I know you're not familiar with all the dyeing processes, but even in the world of natural dyeing, when we like to think that that's the better route to go, there's still chemicals in it. There's still lye, there's still toxins that get used. There's iron, different mordants, alum, and there's different metal mordants that get used in order to fix the dyes so that they stick to the fabric. And so it is inherently part of the textile process. So we can't have the expectation that no chemicals are used. If that's what we want, then we are down to the natural color of the materials, the cotton. And that's okay too. It's not a terrible decision to make, but it is not for everybody globally, because we've had different things going on over the last century. When dyes were first invented back in the late 1800s, synthetic dyes suddenly hit the world, and textile processing changed, mechanization happened, and the Industrial Revolution blew up. And it was very exciting times. And now we're recovering from that. So I think the expectation that there's no chemicals used in textile processing is unrealistic. So I think that it's great that there's that standard. And one of the other things I talked with somebody from Okotex on the show as well, which was a really great conversation. And I got a really great understanding of those different standards of harmful chemicals. And I'm seeing a lot of organic GOTS products that are also getting Okotex standard, which I think is fantastic that both are being attached and addressed. And it feels like those are really fabric production people who have gone to great lengths to make sure that there's no chemicals and nothing left on the fabric when it gets to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on the Okotext standards, but from what I've seen of them, especially the environmental or the chemical residues, that yeah, if you're a GOTS certified facility, your products can easily get Okotex because you're meeting that same requirement in terms of the chemicals. Of course, GOTS goes beyond just that, but yeah, I mean, we find a lot of dual certification with GOTS facilities because a lot of it depends on what the buyer wants and is willing to pay for.
It is still a commodity at the end of the day.
Yes, and some companies want to buy organic fabric, organic textiles, but they don't sell it as organic for whatever reasons. But just as part of their commitment to sustainability and traceability, they say this is what we're going to do, and we don't have to advertise that we're doing something good. And so as much I would like to see more clothing labeled as organic, but knowing that there's a lot of textile out there that is organic or certified to GOTS.
Well, as a consumer, for me, I want to know. I want the labeling, and I want to know that that's actually meeting those standards. Because right now, in the world that we're living in, where you can't really tell where truth lies sometimes, having a standard that has actually gone to the lengths that GOTS has or Okotex, either like both I think are great and have they're different, but I think they're both valid and really awesome. So I look for those certifications because I want to know. I want to know that going back to the farm, things have been paid attention to, and that there is ethical production and sustainable production behind what I'm doing. That's not to say that everything I buy is GOTS certified. I'm working on it, but I can't do it all at once. And sometimes I'll just be upcycling instead and recycling and reusing and repurposing. But I do my best. But if I'm going to be buying new, I want to know, where did it come from? How were the people treated along the way? And how safe is the fibers that I'm using? And how has it impacted the planet? Which is my next question for you. So I'm wondering about what kind of a difference. So you've got 20 years of GOTS doing what it's doing. How is it stacking up? Like, how do we know it? How I know that it's doing better things than standard production. But do you guys have measures? Do you have data? Do we have that kind of information yet?
As a standard setter, we actually don't do the auditing of the facilities ourselves. So that's done through certification bodies that are accredited by accreditation bodies to certify a facility or a company to the GOTS standard, and to audit their transactions to make sure that the goods that are being claimed as GOTS certified are actually. So because of the system that's currently set up in terms of a third-party certification, as of this moment, we don't actually have a lot of data, and we're frustrated by it. We can tell you, how many facilities were certified in 2006. We had 27, and now in 2022, we've got 13,548 facilities. I mean,
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And it's been a slow growth. And I think past couple of years, I'd say since 2018, 2019, it started going pretty steep as the world became more aware. I think greater awareness of sustainability, greater awareness of organic, more demand for
That's
that.
exciting. That's encouraging.
Yes, but I think it's also because of the scares around supply chain issues and the due diligence regulations that companies need to know where their supplies are coming from, and they're responsible for it whether or not they knew. That's the
Right.
that's the kicker.
Okay.
And so that's why. So we've been putting a lot of emphasis on developing a past couple of years now, building it from the bottom up, a a database which is able then to speed up the traceability, because right now actually doing that traceability is a manual process.
Okay.
And it's
Okay.
time consuming. It works, but it's time consuming. And so, of course, digitizing that is a clear way to speed up that process to make the traceability more transparent. Within that, of course, then we can be collecting. We are setting up a more robust monitoring and evaluation system so that we can really measure our impact in the world, not just by the number of facilities, but, for example, how much water was saved, how many people's lives have we touched.
Right, right. Yeah, that'd be great data to have. I love data. I'm a big fan of data. I go looking for it all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, and we need to know what the impact is. And I think up to now, the focus has really been on developing the standard and making it feasible, making it practical, making it work, getting enough industry buy-in. And now the aspects of impact are significant. So in our first years when we had 27 or 100 facilities,
Right, right.
you know that wasn't the focus.
You're not, there's not an impact on the full industry. Now you're reaching a tipping point where it's like, oh, there is an impact actually happening on the industry now. What does that look like?
Well, impact on the industry, I would love to be able to say that. But if we just recognize that, you know, not all of the organic cotton that's produced in the world goes into the GOTS system. There's also the organic content standard, and there's also organic cotton sold as conventional cotton because they don't have the market linkages, which is sad and frustrating. But with all the organic cotton, it's only 1% of cotton. And cotton is only like 40% or something like that of fibers. And the greater majority of fibers being used are synthetic. And, so it's like, yes, I would prefer everything to be organic cotton, but I think I would much prefer a natural fiber than a synthetic one.
Yeah, well, and I think that if we decided today that we were just going to go to natural fibers, I don't know if we've got enough farms to be able to produce enough fibers to meet the global requirements for fibers right now.
I think you're right. I think the culture of fast fashion probably wouldn't let us only do natural fibers.
Yeah. Well, and I my next standard that I'm hoping to connect with is the Global Recycling Standard, to see if I can talk with them, because they're the ones that are hopefully going to start pushing change around the synthetic fiber production and starting to see that recycling content brought in a much more robust way than it is right now. It's a whole other conversation of disparity that I think that we have going on in the world. But like for now, I think that it's amazing that the GOTS is doing what it's doing to push and move into 1% of the fiber production of cotton is awesome. And that's only going to continue to grow. And won't it be amazing when we see 50% of all cotton production as organic? And I hope I'm around when that happens, and that it's not too far in the future. So yeah, I think you guys are doing great work. I think it's really important that we strive for this.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of recycling or upcycling, one of the aspects for additional fibers in GOTS textiles. So we have, I don't know if I mentioned this, but we have two label grades. So there's a made with organic.
Okay, no, I didn't know.
So we have the made with organic label grade that's a minimum of 70% organic fiber.
Okay.
And then we have just the organic one, which is minimum 95%. So that's very similar to the food standards, organic food. And of course, then that 5% or that 30%, those are the additional fibers. And oftentimes that's a little bit of elastane, or give that little stretch, or maybe it's organic cotton with a blend of conventional wool, for example. But sometimes you also need a little bit of polyester for some functionality, or so I'm told. But we then require that it is recycled. And
Okay.
and so like that's one of the things that we are of course then aware of is that it can't we do need to be the clothing needs to be functional and enjoyable to wear, right? And so that's where that 5%, you want your socks to be a little stretchy. Like it's
Well, and I have to admit, I like my denim jeans with a little bit of a stretch. It's
yes,
helpful to put them on.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely. It makes it very difficult to recycle because then you have to how do you separate the natural versus synthetic fibers? But I think that efforts around the world that are developing recycling are commendable.
yeah, I hope so. I mean, that's like I said, that's my next area that I want to dive into a bit more is seeing what that recycling can look like, and what the efforts are, because it's we just hear the reports, and I know this isn't really your topic, but we hear the reports around recycling, especially in our area in Canada. Only about 10% of bottles that are sent to recycling facilities actually get recycled. The other 90% actually goes just to landfill and can't be recycled. So I don't know whether that's because they don't actually get to the facilities in the first place. We think we're recycling it, but then it never goes there. Or if they just can't actually they've only got very strict parameters for recycling that they can do. Anyway, that's something that I want to learn more about, and especially on the textile side of things and what's going on in the industry to actually what's exciting that's going on, what's coming down. That's
Yeah,
what I want to
I
know.
mean, and from what I know from my colleagues, in terms of recycling and polyesters, that a lot of the recycled polyester clothing actually comes from those plastic bottles, whereas actually what we're talking about, or what people in the industry are saying, yes, we do recycled fabrics. Well, for us, we'd say, why aren't we taking? You're not supposed to use a plastic bottle. You're supposed to use polyester clothing that is then recycled.
Right.
But of course,
Yeah.
that's more challenging. Those are supply chain issues,
It's more challenging. Yeah.
but more challenging, I think, also is more rewarding.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully those are the bright spots that I think are coming in the next couple of years, decades, where people there's very smart and excited youth coming up into the industries now, and I think we're going to see some amazing changes happening. At least that's my hope. I'm
Yeah,
always hopeful.
absolutely. I mean, and there's, you asked earlier about organic cotton batting, or that filling, and it definitely exists. Maybe under another, it's sold under another term, just cotton lint, would be one way to say it. But I think one of the big things in the organic fabric sector generally is that the request or the demand for particular products aren't heard or aren't made strong enough, right? So you want that, but how does the producer know that? And so making those supply chain linkages aren't so easy, but that's something that we need to build.
Well, and that's I always really, really try to encourage anybody I'm talking to use their voice, because at the retail level, we've actually got this enormous amount of power. If we start going in and saying, "Do you have organic? Do you have organic? Do you have certified organic? Do you have some GOTS organic materials in your local quilt store?" Then that local quilt store owner is going to go to their supplier and say, "Well, I'm being asked for organics. Do you guys carry organics?" And then suddenly that distributor is going to go back to their producers and their manufacturers and say, we're getting asked for organics. Sorry, we're leaving you. And then that manufacturer is going to go, oh, well, then maybe we'll move to organic because that's where the money is. So I think the more we use our voices as consumers, the more the chain will happen, and that it'll get back to those producers to say, okay, organic is actually becoming important.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a demand-driven development. One thing that I wanted to share earlier before I lose the chance is in terms of the cutting edge research or not just cutting edge research, but the effort to develop these things takes time. One of the things that I was very happy to learn about was naturally colored cotton. And I'm not talking about just brown. I'm talking about greens, like a moss green, a nice little blue shade. And it's like, oh my God, these are amazing because then they don't even require any dyes. I mean, that's like the pinnacle of ecologically friendly right there. You've got colors straight from the fiber.
Yeah, I was talking with a woman from Two Sisters Eco Textiles earlier. I did an interview with her a while ago, and she's been working in the textile industry to bring organics and further sustainable production around materials that she brings into her store for like the last 25-30 years. And she was saying that there's these natural, I didn't know that you could get cotton that was green or you could get cotton that was brown. I had no idea. I always thought it was white because you see the white cotton bolls and you think that's it, but these ones are actually green cotton bolls or blue cotton bolls or brown cotton, which is awesome. And I think that would be, like we were saying earlier, that's the ideal, to not have to dye it those colors in the first place. We have to be willing then to accept the natural colors. But if the natural colors are kind of beautiful anyway, then that's awesome. I'd go for that.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. So maybe we'll start demanding, and then we'll see those farmers who'd produce just blue cotton.
Yeah, well, it could definitely happen.
Yeah, that'd be exciting. I want to thank you so very much for talking with me today. It's been like super interesting conversation. So people are wanting to learn more about GOTS and understand some of the chain of custody and is there like a number attached to something that people can actually check out? Like, is there a way for people to verify if it's GOTS or not?
Yeah, so on a GOTS certified product, there will be a hang tag, or sometimes it's sewn in, and there'll be the GOTS logo with a certifier number, as well as the name of the certification body that certified this product. And you can actually take that number code and go to the www.global-standard.org, and there you can actually enter the certifying number of that product that you find, and that's the way to check.
Okay. It's a little trickier for quilters because we're just getting the fabric, so we don't get the hang tags with it. But it would be on the bolt.
It should be on the bolt of fabric or on the casing of the bolt.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so yeah, if you're buying fabric or pieces of fabric, I'm sure you can ask your the shop that you're buying from, see that it's organic.
That's awesome. Yeah, really interesting conversation today. Thank you so much for being here and helping us understand this a little bit better. I could probably talk to you for about another hour or so.
There's so much
we
to
all
say.
have time.
Yeah.
There's so much to say. And so tell me, so I have two questions for you on more of your background, first of all, and where do you live?
I currently live in Albania. So my wife and I started a food processing company here. To support agroforestry systems. We make nut butters from
Oh, cool.
so like almond, hazelnut, and walnut butter, stone ground, activated nuts. It's a work of passion to support.
That's amazing.
And now we're starting an organic grower group, so getting these small farmers certified, which is exciting and challenging.
That's very exciting. Yeah. I have a whole host of other questions, but I think I would have to take another half an hour to get into that because I would like to know. You said a whole bunch of things there that I want to ask questions about, but I'm gonna just end us there because that's maybe another conversation for another time. That would be very cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for this. This has been really great.
Well, Bridget, it's been a pleasure. If you have any other questions, just let me know.
I will. I will.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks so much. I found that to be really interesting. What I really loved about that interview was, the fact that GOTS is still doing a lot of work out there and that they are really working towards long-term change. And one of the things that I loved that I learned in there is how exponentially the standard and certifications are growing right now over the last 5 to 10 years, how much uptake there has been from the industry, and that people are starting to recognize the importance of having a certification, and having a standardized global certification makes it so much easier for the consumer to identify a legitimate label. And so they're streamlining that stuff and making those great efforts to start collecting data so we can start to understand how much of a difference it is actually making. We know it's making a difference because the changes that are being made at the production level and the health of the workers that are there, the social contexts, we know those things are being improved, but we don't have that quantifiable data. And so I'm really excited. I mean, I'm a bit of a data nerd. I love the data. So I'm excited to start seeing that coming in so we can start to understand better what kind of differences it's making and where it can still be improved. Because that's the beauty of data, is it helps take us in new directions. So I'm pretty excited about that. Anyway, I hope you really enjoyed this episode. I did. I love learning about some of the deeper things around what the industry is doing and some of the higher level policy stuff that's influencing the products that we buy and that are available to us. And I think it's really important to understand that work and understand what it means to us in the end. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this so much. I will talk to you again very soon. Thank you so much for joining me and listening to Threads of Sustainability. I really appreciate all the support that I've received over the last year. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can go over to my website and you can buy me a cuppa, and that helps keep the lights on here. You can also follow, and share the podcast with people that you know that might be interested. If you're interested in joining a community where we talk about all the different kinds of things around sustainability and share projects and share our journeys with each other, you can join the Green Stitchers Hive. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. You can send me an email. I'd love to hear from you and hear what you think about the podcast. Have a great day.